Welcome to New Calvinism for Dummies Part 2. Okay, what we want to focus on in this first part, now we are going to get back to the doctrinal part of this that comes out of the philosophy. But one of the things I really want to drive home in this video is this doctrine came out of a worldview of philosophy, if you will. That is the very core element here that drives the octopus. All right, puts feet on him, so to speak. This is very important to realize. This is looking at this new Calvinist problem from the lowest common denominator as a beginning point. And like I said, we'll get back to the doctrine. As I said in the first part, it becomes obvious that the goal of the forum was to develop a consistent, systematic theology that would contra existentialism as much as possible, because they really saw existentialism as the mother of all evil. So this is what they came up with, and interesting. People may be able to do a better job of this than me, but through my research, I wasn't able to find really a doctrine, a specific philosophy or doctrine that was the antithesis of existentialism. So I came up with this name on my own, existentialism. Now, certainly, the centrality of the objective gospel outside of us is the theological antithesis of existentialism, no doubt about it. And this is no doubt the where thinking at the Australian Forum began, and no doubt the core four of the Australian Forum were totally on the same page with this. Now, they came up with this philosophy and worldview and pushed it to the point to where it even became necessary to deny the evangelical concept of the new birth. Now, you know, the New Calvinist claim to believe in the new birth, but their definition isn't the same, and New Calvinism came out of the Australian Forum, and the view of the new birth is the same. They both, in essence, reject it, even though they're nuanced about it. At any rate, in the next part of this video series, I will connect the dots between present-day New Calvinist and the Australian Forum doctrine and philosophy that we're looking at now. But it became necessary for them to deny the new birth because, again, it's the antithesis of existentialism, which teaches that truth is found inside of us. We make our own truth. It's a very subjective approach to salvation and a relationship with Jesus Christ, which Soren Kierkegaard did, strive to do, and of course he grew up in a very dry, religious environment, so it's understandable why he would, come up with this doctrine. But at any rate, the Forum, in seeking to be the antithesis of that, came out with the opposite, which, as you saw in the previous illustration, is all truth must come from without. No truth can come from within. It all has to come from without. So if you have the evangelical view of the new birth, that becomes a problem, because that indicates strongly, or strongly insinuates, that we're now enabled to create, in their thinking, create truth within ourselves. They believed that this was split up into two realms. Alright? Reality was split up into two realms, the objective and the subjective. Gospel is objective, and anything our thinking and experiences are all in the subjective realm. Now, what makes this really tricky is new Calvinists like the Forum, and clearly stated in the article that we're looking at here, that was published in Present Truth, The False Gospel of the New Birth. They concur, yes, the subjective is reality. The subjective is reality. Some of it's true, some of it isn't true. It's how we experience life in our faith. But, for lack of a better way of putting it, it's irrelevant. The only thing that's relevant is the objective gospel completely outside of us. And this is a unifying link that connects the Forum among other doctrines. It's the major one that connects the Australian Forum with present-day New Calvinism in a big way, and we'll be looking at that in the future parts after we get done examining these initial parts. So the new birth had to be dealt with, and the way they dealt with it is the new birth is true, and all this, that, and the other, but it's subjective. It's in the subjective realm. Our focus has to be in the objective, or completely outside of us realm. All right, i.e. the gospel. Okay, now we're going to look at the doctrine that this philosophy led to, and this is going to come together for you more in the next part. In the next part, we're going to discuss how this philosophy and doctrine operates supposedly in real life. Well, and it does operate that way, but unfortunately to the destruction of many. First, in regard to the doctrine that this philosophy led to, we're going to look at orthodoxy first. And orthodoxy holds to the fact that justification is a completely finished work and separate from sanctification. So you've got the fact that we're forgiven when we believe in, by faith alone. We're declared righteous and forgiven for all past and future sins. It's a declaration, all right, by God. God's righteousness is completely imputed to us, to our account, and that's that. It's a finished work. At that point, when we believe by faith, Glorification's guaranteed, and this is why Romans 8:30 talks about glorification even being in the past tense. That's just the way for the Holy Spirit to drive home the point that this is completely finished. It's completely finished to the point to where it's like it's already done. Okay? So sanctification is completely different, totally separate, and it requires the new birth to be experienced, of course. That comes, the new birth is when we receive the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. And sanctification is then a co-laboring. The Bible's very specific about it, what is called synergism. It's a cooperation of the believer with the Holy Spirit, and it's even a co-laboring. All right? Orthodoxy has always rejected sanctification by faith alone. It's always rejected it. Sanctification is totally separate, but what's key is that nothing we do in our sanctification can affect justification. Can't add to it, can't take away. That's where our assurance of salvation comes from. The two are completely different. Now, how we co-labor with the Holy Spirit in sanctification can dictate how we experience the fact that we've been born again and justified. That can be hindered, and now we're in the realm and talking about the father-son, father-spiritual-daughter relationship, how that's experienced. It's two different experiences. Sanctification, has to do with how we experience the relationship with our Father, whereas justification has to do with our position, whether or not we've been translated from the kingdom of darkness into the kingdom of the Son and proclaimed completely justified. Okay, once again, in contrast to the idea that sanctification finishes justification, or as the Forum said, that sanctification was, quote, justification in action. This has never been seen ever as being orthodox, and of course the SDA influence of fusing these two together supplied a faulty premise for the Forum, and certainly the new Calvinism that came after it. Okay, this will be our last slide for the second part, but we're going to take this up again beginning with the third part, because this is major. And this is another one of the things that connects the Australian Forum with present-day New Calvinism. This whole concept of the golden chain of salvation. And we're going to begin our next part by looking at this very closely, because it's key. It's very key. And so we'll be looking at a little bit more doctrine in the next part, and then we're going to get into how this all supposedly works in real life, which is going to give you more understanding about how their philosophy and this doctrine fits together and how they teach it. And then after that, we're going to get into connecting all of the dots between the Australian Forum and present-day New Calvinists. Thank you for watching this video, and on to the third part.